Alrighty, so I suppose we'll start with a couple of the miscellaneous ones that I prepared earlier. Okay, here's a little one. If you could pick one single thing in the app that you could change today, what would it be and why?
Change today. Well, it would be Raiz Kids. And I think the why is pretty obvious because that's the one we're getting the most requests to change. I think when we brought out Raiz Kids, it was a very simplistic approach to the issue. And as more and more people have adopted it, they want more and more functionality around the Raiz Kids function. So we're currently working on it. You know, you'll have a ability as a parent or a guardian or whatever role you hold to be able to say, you know, yes, my child can log on and see their own account, or no, they can't log it on. And then they'll have options, you know, anywhere from, you know, the child is able to change their portfolio or not, to being able to change amounts coming in and etc. We're working through all that process right at the moment about the functionality required. At some point in time, we'll probably put it out there on Raiz Central and get feedback on it. And then working through the designs and getting it developed and coded up. But I think that's, you know, based on the way we monitor not just what's happening on Raiz Central, but also on what feedback we get through surveys and what feedback we get through emails. Raiz Kids needs a good overhaul, and that's what we're working on at the moment.
Yeah, I must admit it's an interesting one because I remember when I think Raiz Kids has been out about 4 years now, hasn't it? Because it wasn't
for a while.
Yeah. And I suppose at the time, when it was released, it was fit for purpose, I suppose you'd say, for the people that wanted to use it. And I suppose I noticed quite a bit of the discourse in the group. Sometimes people are really happy with it. Sometimes people are like, oh, it's a gimmick. So yeah, it's nice to hear that something different's being happening. Something different will be happening on that front. So
yeah, and there are a lot of you know, young families that join the Raiz app, and the parents don't really ever look. You know, they might look at the balance every 3 months, every 6 months. They've really just set it up for saving for their children. Yeah. And there are others who are much more active on the app, and then they would maybe see Raiz Kids more of a gimmick. And then there are other parents who'd like to use it for more of educational purposes as well. And so they need, you know, they want the child to have a separate log on, be able to see things, but not necessarily be able to change things.
Yeah, I must admit, I've seen that happen a few times where folks have said in the comments, oh, well, we've got an account for ourselves, but we've set one up for our son or daughter so they can take a look and we can sit down and show them what it all means and how it's growing over time. And it's always interesting like that.
Yeah.
I remember, it would have been a couple of chats ago, you mentioned there was kind of tax implications and things that you have to work around with having trust accounts. Is that something you're going to have to work through with a reworked Raiz Kids section? Or
no, it'll still be the same structure. Like the parent will be responsible for all the tax. But it will just be under a structured better technology wise that it gives more flexibility for the parent.
Okay, makes sense. Alrighty, next question. When is Raiz launching a merch store? Are they ever going to launch a merch store?
You know, some of the staff talked about launching a merch store, and they never really got around to it. And because we always ask them the question, you know, okay, if we launch a merch store, how are you going to manage the inventory? And no one seems to want to deal with that issue. And it is quite a big issue to manage the inventory because, you know, if we want to be able to supply, and someone says, I want my extra large t-shirt or my small t-shirt, we want to have it on stock. You know what I mean? And so not only do you have to be able to deliver it, but you also have to be able to order it in and keep it moving. And we run on a very lean machine at Raiz, and no one's really put their hand up to run a merch store, even though I do like your mask with the Raiz logo on it.
I've got one of them floating around somewhere.
I don't know if cloth masks are that hygienic anymore, but we'll go, if that's fine. I still wear one. So it's something that gets talked about, but no one seems to be inside Raiz really wants to take responsibility for delivering. Once they understand, once kind of like Brendan has sat down and gone through them, this is all the inventory management process that you'll need to do. And they go, oh, that's too hard. And it's like, well, someone has to do it.
if you don't manage the stock inventories and the returns, and you don't know how much you've got floating around, and that's
So we still do the same. We'll still do what we're doing now, where we buy, we buy inventory and then give it away, etc. But I don't know, because if we're doing a merch store, then we really have to provide a service and provide it in the same, in a very reliable way. And it's a different proposition than just giving away merch as, a promotional feature.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's any chance you're getting the Noel Whittaker pallet worth of books back in for your giveaways?
Yeah, I might get some Noel Whittaker books back in. We were thinking about that as well, for giveaways as well. Yeah.
You'll have to be careful. There's a lot of competition in the, I suppose, finance space for books these days. There's quite a few influencers out there releasing books, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, there's 10 tons, and I've even seen that the Barefoot Investor now has a television show running on Foxtel.
Yeah.
So the world is changing. Yeah.
I got to admit, that one was a bit of a strange one. Well intended, I suppose, but.
I never watched it, so I don't know how, I mean, he's obviously, the thing about the Barefoot Investor is obviously very common sense.
Yeah.
And so so it's very relatable financial advice.
Yeah.
But I never saw what the television shows were like.
Yeah, I must admit, I was watching a few of the groups talking about different ways to watch the stuff and get into Foxtel and out as quickly as they could. And I was like, I always find it a little bit ironic that he's on a not social,
a pay for
platform.
channels. Yeah, subscription platform.
When he's talking about keeping an eye on your subscriptions and stuff. So,
yeah.
Well,
each to their own.
Yeah, irony is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got another one here. So one of the things that came up in the first live chat, and it kind of became a little bit of a meme since, is we were talking about large balances just for the sake of it. And you mentioned in passing that you'd seen a couple of balances up around the $400,000 mark. One of the questions I keep getting asked is that higher? Are there people with big balances these days? And I've tried to sit down with a pen and paper and figure out what the maximum balance is in there. But do you have any insights as to like how big some people have their balances in Raiz, or?
Yeah. Can we just go back to the meme part? Because I think the Raiz Central doesn't think we do funny enough memes. So anyone with suggestions, just keep them coming in. It is actually quite hard to come up with funny memes. Yeah. I've just got to tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is quite, and we're talking about the financial services industry, which is not the most exciting industry to start off with. The largest balance we've seen is about 1.5 million, roughly, probably, somewhere between 1.4, 1.5 million.
Yeah.
And it's from a user who does maintain a very large balance in there, but he also uses it a lot like a cash account.
Yep.
So sometimes it'll be that high, and then sometimes it might be below $1 million, and then it'll go back up. I don't really know what he does, but we are just, so currently at the moment, it's not uncommon to have balances around $700,000 or $800,000 on the platform. Yeah, there are not many of these people. We're talking about 10 or 15. We're not talking about, tens of thousands of people like this.
Yeah.
But the two things we've noticed are the balance on custom portfolios is significantly larger than the average balance. So that's pushing, above 4K on the custom portfolios, while the average balance is probably about 2.5, across the whole platform. On super funds, it's probably closer to 30,000, 35,000. So we've had some self-managed super funds sign up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also on super balances, it's around that 25,000 mark, maybe a bit higher at the moment. So, so that's kind of like a breakdown of what the balances look like.
Yeah, it's always quite interesting.
Yeah,
I remember,
but there are people who realize, that they can see their large balances in real time, and our fees are really not that outrageous for those type of money. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting like that. It's I always find it quite amusing when people talk about the fees argument these days. I think there were a few kind of heated discussions in March when the fee increase was announced. I think from your recent releases, you've mentioned there hasn't been much churn on that front. But I suppose that kind of becomes a real, I suppose, a pain point for people.
Yeah, but it's also, we get kind of like persecuted quite a lot because we're also very transparent what we do.
Yeah.
And a lot of the fee increases say what, the banks are doing similar fee increases. They can do it in a way which is just not transparent. And that might be the deposit rate comes right down, or that they change the number of credit card transactions or debit card transactions you have to do before you get, the fee-free period. Yeah. Or I've noticed, for example, Westpac has changed the fee structure on my credit card recently. Yeah. Because they know they've got a lot more products, transactional products, so they can, even though it might not look like, you're losing here, but you're picking, you're losing on a debit card or somewhere. So, it's very hard. But we have a very simple and transparent model. So we obviously, it's a lot easier to put your finger on us and go, oh, look, they've increased their fees. Or the bank, or other financial institutions, it can be a lot easier to do it in a lot less transparent way.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very interesting thing to see pop up. And as you mentioned, your fee structure is fairly transparent. It's on the website. It's pretty clear. One of the interesting little comments that comes up is that the fees aren't displayed in the app, though. I do understand that kind of theory behind that is because fees are coming out of a funding account rather than directly out of a balance that they don't necessarily hit the account. But is that something you might look at in future in putting a little thing that says fees paid in the app just for enhanced visibility?
Well, it's on all the statements that we put out. Yep, it's always, it's not like we hide it. I mean, we obviously hide it. It's obviously not displayed, in the app in the way that the customers want, but it's not like when they see their monthly statements, it's pretty clear there that the fee is taken out. And so we end up, there's a bit of regulatory issues around this, because when we're taking money out, the app is really displaying what the return on the fund, or what's coming out of the fund account. And if you're not over the threshold, so if you're over the threshold, you will see the fee.
Yep.
But if you're under the threshold, the fee's coming out of your bank account. And so it's hard. It does increase the amount of wording, but that, let's just be honest, that's a little bit of excuse. At the end of the day, as I said, we're pretty transparent with our fees. Well, I think we're pretty transparent with the fees. People who seem to talk about they want to see their fees, displayed in the app, all know what the fee is. It's just, they just would like to see it displayed in the app. But it also would discourage a lot of people from saving as well. So I don't, it's not like you can't find it. If you go to your monthly statements, you'll find it. But it's just not displayed in the app.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, I must admit.
I mean, the thing is, we have so many customers now that we're never going to satisfy everyone. Yeah, as I was talking about with Raiz Kids, we have a whole group of people who wouldn't look at their app for 6 months because they just let it run in the background of life and see what it is. And it's only when someone mentions Raiz, they go, well, that's right, I've got that turned on, saving for my kids, and I'll look at the balance. Yeah. While there are other people who will look at Raiz every day, and everyone uses it for completely different reasons and has completely different expectations from the app and what they want us to deliver. The other one is which is really hard to gauge, is thank you for your support. Yeah, the text after it.
Yeah.
But everyone knows it. So it does its job. Yeah. And then I go to my staff, I'm happy to change it, but you come up with something, different, better, and we'll change it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we are thankful for people's support. You know what I mean? I understand we're not a charity, but we are, we are grateful that we have customers. Yeah. And we can deliver this product. Yeah.
It's always an interesting one like that. It's
but people, we forget, and so we might get 5 or 2 people, 5 or 10 people a week talking about it. You send out 1.5 million of those a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy like that, isn't it? It's
yeah.
I must admit,
but a lot of people don't, the majority of people are not that fussed about it. Yeah. And in fact, it's becoming like a little bit of a trademark.
Yeah. I'd agree. I definitely get it every day because I'm a regular daily investor and I stick with it. So yeah, works out pretty well.
Yeah.
At least I know that the money's hit the account. And
Exactly.
It does
correct.
The job. So it's kind of that little bit of positive reinforcement there as well. I think, I suppose myself as an individual user, I look at it and I go, wow, I've got $15,000 in there. 5 years ago, if someone had said to me, Josh, you put away 15 grand into an app, I would have said bullshit. Suffice to say, personally, I think for me, Raiz helps with my investing habit. It's building up a positive habit and keeping it going. And yeah, sure, some days I might go out and do something ridiculous like buy shoes or whatever, but it's kind of that building that positive momentum so that, down the track, I'll be able to say, use that money to maybe buy a house or maybe just let it grow and see how it goes. So,
correct. Exactly right. And, we are, we are very proud that we've helped so many people who, never thought they could save, suddenly realize that they can save. Yep. And they can save in ways which don't necessarily affect their lifestyle. Yeah.
Definitely. Alrighty. I think we'll duck into one of the questions from Cooper in the chat. He's gone, what's up, guys? Love these. Great to hear. We enjoy doing them as well. So something a little bit different. Great appreciation and good growth in Southeast Asia. What's next for Raiz?
Raiz is very much limited to Southeast Asia. That was a deal we did with the US Acorns parent when we moved away. So that we've done Indonesia, we've gone into Indonesia, we've gone to Malaysia. We're basically in Thailand. We're not operational yet, but we're incorporated. We've got staff and we're building the software stack there for Thailand. And we're beginning to investigate Vietnam. Yep, and they're kind of like the largest countries out of that.
Yeah,
and sophisticated. And then we can, maybe in 10 years' time we can go into Myanmar or into Cambodia. I'm not holding my breath, but anything's possible. And then at the same time we've got the US Acorns listing through a SPAC. Maybe by the end of the year, and so they'll, they've already said they've got international expansion plans. So
yeah, that could
we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, it's I know one of the things that kind of comes up once in a blue moon. Will Raiz ever look at maybe going to somewhere like New Zealand?
Well, the problem is we are a subscription model. And we are a very large subscription model. And New Zealand, one, is already well serviced by some micro type investing app.
Yeah.
And two, the population is not that large. So it's the same reason we didn't go into Singapore, because Singapore has roughly 8 million people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is roughly the amount of people between Wollongong and Newcastle in New South Wales. And it's just not, it's just not a big enough market.
Yeah.
In this current flat fee subscription model.
Yeah. So just probably not now, but maybe one day, but I wouldn't hold my breath, I suppose.
Correct.
Okay. I'll pass that on next time I speak to a Kiwi about Raiz.
Yeah, but they've also got, New Zealand's very well serviced with current products as well.
Yeah. I think one of the ones that came up, I actually think it came up in MarketLip. I think Sharesies is one of those things that kind of floats around over there, and it sounds like
Sharesies is like has a massive market dominance. I mean, you got to be careful because they do allow you to start with 1 cent or something, and so it's like if you can have no minimum investment, you can have a lot of customers. Yeah. So they have quite a large market share over there, but and they're moving here into Australia as well. I mean, that area of online broking through apps like Stake or Sharesy or Superhero, etc., is really heating up.
Yeah, definitely. There's been, I suppose, there's been really a big amount of expansion in that space in the last, I suppose, 2 years. As you said, places like apps like Stake, Sharesy, Superhero, Perla, to name a few. And I suppose there's been kind of developments in other areas in the space as well in terms of micro investing. Bamboo, arguably, but I'm a bit sketchy on that. And then kind of interesting tech creations that take a tool like, say, Raiz Rewards and try and create that as some sort of full-featured product, which I think Upstreet is doing, which I always find a little bit interesting. How do you kind of observe your nearest neighbors in the market these days? Because I'm mindful that Raiz is a unique product in itself, but there are kind of a lot of similar players that you can get involved with, say, $100. And, someone was talking the other day, they put $200 into Raiz, $200 into Spaceship, and they're like, yeah, we'll leave it and see how we go. How do you kind of manage expectations as a product versus, people that you really can't fairly compare against for, various reasons?
Yeah. So the best way to do it is kind of like the way we do it is to make sure that we provide the best experience for our users possible. And that's all we can do. We have a product, we get great feedback from our users, so we know what they want and how to develop the product, like Raiz Kids, for example. And then, so our users are always telling us where we're going to go. So we've got that pathway mapped up.
Yeah.
And in some ways we can't move as quickly as our users would like. Like if our users, we'd have 100 ETFs already in custom portfolios, and we just can't. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And we are going to expand it, but we just can't move as fast as our users would like us to.
Yeah.
And so that pathway, and then we just have to keep that. We're very good at acquiring customers. We get, as long as we can continue to this great expectations and customer service, we'll get this great feedback from our customers. We're very good at product development and structuring, and the Bitcoin is an example. No one else in Sydney, Australia, Melbourne have been able to crack that nutshell of how you put Bitcoin into a retail mutual fund, regulated by ASIC, but we got there. Yeah. And we delivered it technology. We're very good at that part, and then that will attract new customers, and that loop just keeps going round and round.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting to see how things have developed. I mean, I suppose Bitcoin's really exploded in the last year, and personally, I'm not a huge fan of cryptocurrency, but even myself I've kind of dabbled a little bit with it in the past year, and it's kind of interesting to see it come in, and I can just jump in the app and be like, yep, done. I'll set up a little allocation towards it and just see how it goes.
Correct.
Yeah, it's interesting like that. Do you see kind of potentially other cryptocurrencies maybe leaning in there at some point?
Maybe, and obviously Ethereum is the obvious choice to go in next. But right at the moment, we're just quite happy with sticking with Bitcoin. I know there are a lot of concerns about the environmental issues associated with Bitcoin. And I've always known about the amount of electricity, electricity they use. I think people forget how much electricity everything uses. Yeah. And it's just, we've got it now. It'll be the same problem with electric cars. When you have like 1 or 2% of your car drivers driving electric cars, they look very eco-friendly. Yeah. But when you have everybody driving electric cars, then they're not so eco-friendly anymore, because the electricity has to be made from somewhere, and they use a hell of a lot of electricity. Yeah. And to give you an example, I think when they did the Snowy River upgrade, it's like 120 megawatt upgrade. Yeah. Amazon doesn't build a data center. Amazon data centers tend to be around 60 megawatts minimum. So when they build a new data center, it's like uses up the entire or two of them will use up the entire output from the extension of the green part of the Stony River.
Yeah.
So that's not really an excuse, but we will find, and you will find, you know, just because this is a new world we live in, that more and more Bitcoin miners will be going more and more green in the use where they find their electricity from, for two reasons. One, because it does tend to be cheaper.
Yeah.
And once you've done the initial capital outlay, it tends to be free. Yeah. And two, you know, there is a very strong movement about eco-friendly.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens on that front over there.
It'll be interesting to see, but it is an amazing amount of power. But I think people would be, you know, I was amazed when I found out how much an Amazon, a small Amazon data center uses. Yeah. Yeah. Let alone what, you know, like a standard data center would use.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting one in seeing how things are tracked, I suppose, with Bitcoin. You know, from all along the blockchain what the transactions are, so you can kind of use that to accurately project and estimate how much power is being used. Whereas comparatively, if I go on and turn on my microwave, EMO can't expect to guess how many people are going to have their microwaves turned on at any particular point. So I think we've seen that in the last couple of months as well. So
yeah,
it's interesting like that. So yeah. Cooper also asks, how will the Acorns IPO and international expansion affect Raiz? Does it have any sort of tangible impact? I think they're one of Raiz's largest shareholders. Is that right?
They're correct. We're still very closely related. You know, they have a shareholding in us. Yeah. And they don't, you know, they're not necessarily going to go into the same countries that we are. Yeah.
Yep.
But they'll have their own expansion plans. Yeah. And, you know, off we go. Yeah. But we just have to wait and see. Yeah. I think they'll have a lot of, you know, I remember the days that when we listed, it's a lot of work just to get listed. So that's what they'll be focusing on at the moment, I would imagine. Yeah,
I remember the conversations when listing happened, and everyone was like, "Oh, Raiz will list, and they might do okay." And I think, is it 3 years on, you finally reached parity with your IPO and then surpassed it, and it's been floating back and forth since.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Josh, for putting that one out there. It's yeah, it's hard work being listed.
One of those things.
And so it'll be quite interesting from a valuation perspective, because the US is listing at around 2.2 billion. Yeah. Apparently from the reports, I haven't seen what their prospectuses are or whatever. I'm just based off like the news reports. So, you know, that obviously is they're valued in a significantly different way than us, you know, per customer or revenue multiple or whatever way you want to look at it. Yeah. And so we'll see what the outcome will be.
Yeah. Should be interesting to see what happens on that front.
Yeah.
A little bit of a niche one from Rich, kind of leading into the US tech side of things. So my understanding is when Acorns and the Raiz joint venture split, the tech stacks kind of diverged. Is that right? If I remember that correctly?
We were responsible for our tech stack from the beginning.
Yep.
And so they diverged from day dot, especially around initially from, you know, the regulatory point of view. But we put in things like my finance and Raiz Kids, etc., while we still had the joint venture. Yep. So that they had diverged quite significantly before, and they continued to diverge.
Fair enough. One of the questions that's come up is, are there any plans for a roundup multiplier feature, much like US Acorns has? One of the bemusing things is that Raiz has in marketing accidentally used that as a background before. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do we know which one, so we can get rid of that staff member? No, sorry, just joking.
I don't know about
no, it's okay. I don't know. You know, again, this is another thing on our list that we constantly look at. But when you look at our inflows, the majority of our inflows come from either reoccurring or lump sum. They're about equal. And roundups don't, you know, make up 15 to 20% of our inflows coming in. They're not a significant part. So most people have after using roundups, they move to reoccurring investments. And then when they do that, they don't use the multiple because they just set up the amount that they want to go in because they get a much firmer idea of what their savings goal is and where they want to get to. Yeah.
I suppose.
And so I can understand from a gimmicky point of view why you want the 2x or the 5x type of roundup, but it can also just be achieved and probably in a much more controlled and probably in a wiser fashion by just saying, I'm going to invest $10 every day, or I'm going to invest $10 every week or month or whatever your needs are. Yeah. But that's saying all that, it is definitely sitting there in the to-do list to be implemented in the app, something along that line. But it's not top of the list.
That to-do list is a mystery. Is there any chance that we might see similar to, say, so one of the things that Up Bank does is they do.
Yeah, I saw that mind map type thing where you can see what their product development pathway is. Yeah.
It's like a tree of Up, they call it, which is like a product stack. And granted, they don't reveal everything, but they do kind of give hints and ideas of what they're looking at and what they want to do. Is that something Raiz might look at in the future?
We could look at doing that, yeah. I haven't really looked at that. I mean, I know that you've asked for it, but it's not like we get asked for it often. And I know that, the Up guys did that really interesting thing with the APIs, so people could actually, create their own APIs off their and products off their database. I don't know where that ever went to, but that seemed like a really interesting thing to do and see what happened. So there's things like that we could do as well. But we, so much of our product development is driven from customer feedback.
Yeah.
And not us sitting there going, this is where we think financial services should be going in apps. It's coming from you guys going, this is what we want in the app. Yeah. And so it's very hard to do that kind of product development thing when we're not really in our philosophy to do that. Well, we're saying this is what way it's going to be. Our philosophy is to sit down and go, everyone's asking for this.
Yeah.
Can we do it? How long will it take to do? How much will it cost to do it? Is it going to be worthwhile? Yeah.
It's definitely interesting on that front. I ask way too many questions to Raiz.
No, but it doesn't matter because they all get heard and they all get processed.
Yeah. I must admit, I always laugh because I reckon one of these days, Raiz support will get sick of my classy welcome lines and they will boot me from the support queries, but that hasn't happened yet. So
is that like the text, thank you for your support?
Yeah, a little bit. Arguably a lot more sassy, but that happened. Okay. Sane asks, when are you bringing more rewards partners on board?
Oh, we try to bring rewards partners on board all the time. And so we're up over 300 now. I think last year, definitely after COVID, it fell nearly to like just 200. Yeah. As a lot of people stop their online programs for rewards. We're continuing to bring people on board. We just did a survey, so that helps us quite a lot. Again, Raiz Rewards is kind of like a niche feature. There are a lot of people who will shop and will never think about reward programs. There are other people who love, getting the best deal. And then there are people in the middle who go, after they've done the spend, will go, I should have used Raiz Rewards for that. Yeah, but it's too late. So, we are constantly trying to onboard clients and improve that user experience in Raiz Rewards.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's interesting on that front. Like I think probably personally for me, I've only really started using Raiz Rewards in the last 18 months, just kind of, I'll go on a trip. Oh, why not? I think Brendan Malone, who's the Australian CEO, did a presentation in Melbourne. This would have been going back 2.5 years. And he sat down in front of this was with General Assembly back when you did your in-person kind of discussions and things, which was nice.
In person? That's a weird concept, isn't it? Like people were sitting in a room and you presented.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
And it wasn't online.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, admittedly, we've only ever done these online, even pre-COVID. So, but yeah, I remember we were sitting down and Brendan was presenting and he talked about how you'd have to go out and buy a shirt or something. And for using Raiz Rewards, for him, it was just going into the app, jumping onto David Jones, buying a shirt, and then picking it up. Which I suppose for some people, that's a use case that works for them. For some people, they don't. And I think it's like all things in the app. Some people pick the stuff they like and some people just don't use it. So that's okay too.
Yeah. But what I would, personally, what I'd like to see is more people using it for their super and putting contributions into super.
Yeah. That's
because I mean, it's hard, I know it's very cliche and it doesn't really mean much to a lot of our clients who are quite, who see retirement so far off in the future.
Yeah.
But it's money for jam, and that's only going to help you when you're retired. Do you know what I mean?
It's definitely an interesting one. I think Raiz Rewards, there's a little toggle you can pick to divert rewards into
super. Into Raiz Super. Yeah.
Yeah. I might turn that on at some point, but I'm just happy just leaving it as it is, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. There's for every feature we've got, people are using it in completely different ways, and some of the ways we go are just ways that we never ever dreamt.
Yeah, definitely.
Alrighty.
There's a couple of questions in here about, I suppose, Raiz home ownership and the super estate acquisition, which happened a couple of months ago. So there's kind of been a lean in towards, I suppose, homes as an alternative asset class, as an option in the app. Is that something that's still a ways off, or is there any idea when we might be able to see more information about that? Or?
So it is still a ways off. So what we have to do is actually complete. So the announcement says we're going through the final stages of purchasing super estate. We need a lot of people to consent to us purchasing it, and we're going through that process now.
Yep.
Once that, and the main one being the trustee of the super fund, Diversa. Once we get all the consents in place, we will be able to complete the purchase. And then we will be, the aim of the goal is to introduce an alternative asset class called residential real estate, which we believe is going to be quite relevant to our client base. But to get to that point, Super Estate had to build a database of about 13 million properties, so that they could value properties, so that when they look at residential real estate, they know, hey, we're buying something good value, bad value, whatever. And that product's called Varley, and Super Estate eventually went, oh, we've got this entire database, so that why don't we then let people value their properties on the same database that we're using to run our portfolio. That's called Varley, and that's in the market at the moment. And then Raiz home ownership is a completely different model. Raiz home ownership is not about introducing a new asset class into the portfolios like Bitcoin, and residential portfolios in a way can be looked at Bitcoin, like Bitcoin, but we'll have a higher weight. You'll be able to have a higher weight than, say, Bitcoin capped at 5%. Raiz home ownership is a completely different model. It's actually a one-on-one where you get, human interaction, and they help you through the process of getting a mortgage or refinancing. And especially if you're a first home owner, you never feel, it's your major investment. It's your major life investment, and it's really not that simple. And a lot of people on their first home ownership don't really want a machine doing that. There are a lot of incentives out there. There are not only incentives from the federal government so that you can put lower deposits down. There's also incentives from the state government, the removal of stamp duty, but there are also incentives from companies which will, like Harvey Norman's, for example. They sometimes run first home ownership things where you can get X amount of furniture for free from them, and or nothing for free, but for some way. I don't really know, but I know these things exist.
Yeah.
And so you do need a kind of like an expert who has an understanding of what's going on. And then not everyone, like when they, like the recent announcements of the state government or from the federal government are only administered by two banks, Commonwealth and NAB. And so these things get really complicated. Getting your first mortgage is really complicated. It's also very scary if it's your first time because it's such a large investment. And so basically we have mortgage brokers who will help you through that process.
Okay, that's definitely interesting. All right, so leaning back to the super estate and Raiz and that real estate investment thing being available in Raiz, will that be something that's available in both, I suppose, the retail stuff, so just a regular Raiz account, as well as Raiz Super?
Eventually, so super estate will exist still, so you'll be able to go into the super estate super if you want the residential. We will eventually ask Diversa, who's the super fund trustee, to see if it's possible to put it into Raiz Super. And then hopefully, if we can, there's a lot of legal and regulatory in this whole thing, this whole process. So for example, I'm meeting ASIC next Tuesday exactly on this topic to talk them through it, what it's going to look like. Not on the super side, just putting into Raiz Super. Into the normal Raiz. But hopefully the ultimate aim is to get it into Raiz Super. As well as have it outside. But initially, we're obviously going to get more demand from outside, when it's outside super than inside super.
That'll definitely be interesting to see how that goes. Do you see more changes happening on the Raiz Super front? It's interesting that Raiz Super currently only offers the first 6 portfolios, doesn't often involve Bitcoin or customization at the moment. Obviously, with the super environment, that's always a little bit tricky to do. But do you see changes like that? Or I think Hussein's asked things like superannuation insurance. Do you see those sorts of things changing, or any major changes happening down there, kind of down the track?
So we're always trying to improve our superannuation insurance product inside the life insurance product inside the super, but keep it competitive at the same time. And that's a constant process that's always going on. I don't think you'll ever see, I don't think it'll cryptocurrency through a super product like Raiz Super will be seen anytime in the near future. Obviously, if you had a self-managed super fund, you could buy cryptocurrency through Raiz portfolio, but not through a kind of like a retail super fund with Diversa as the trustee, because the trustee is making the decision, and it's not, when you're a self-managed super fund, you're making the decision, and so you're ultimately responsible. Well, if you've got a trustee and, Bitcoin can be quite wild, it's not necessarily always going to go your way. They don't want to deal with the issues that are generated, and fair enough. And then custom portfolios, the addition of custom portfolios, we'd have to, add a lot more constraints around custom portfolios. Like you wouldn't be able to probably put 100% in an STW or IVV like you can at the moment. And so in some people do use it as more of a trading tool than a necessarily an investment tool, because it is, from a fee point of view, very competitive if you do use it as a trading tool. But it's a discussion that we can have, but the first discussion we're going to have really with our trustee is trying to get real estate into the portfolio.
So those sort of things just take time and patience and energy, and
and also it's talking to, it was 18 months of talking with the regulator to get Bitcoin in the portfolio, and hopefully it's a little bit quicker with residential real estate, but who knows? Everyone's very busy as well, and when we talk to the regulator, we are so far down their priority list. It's
definitely an interesting space at the moment, seeing it all go round and round in circles. It's alrighty. Just trying to think. any hints as to what might be coming next to custom, or is that something that's kind of still a little ways off?
No, we've I've been going through all the requests. Vanguard seems to have done a very good marketing on the entire world. So I'm very impressed by Vanguard and what they've done, because there seems to be very high knowledge of the Vanguard ETFs. Yeah. Compared to the, say, for example, Betashares or
the VanEck of the world.
VanEck. I mean, I don't think the VanEck is so far down the list of what people are requesting. It's, but some of the, I know that it was mentioned in before, the small cap Vanguard might be something that we look at adding, and mainly because it allows you to capture, companies in early stage growth. So, like, if you did have another what's it called again? Afterpay, it would come first in the small cap before it got shifted up into the ASX 200, and so you could go along for the whole ride. Yeah, we're not going to be introducing individual stocks. Yeah, but we are, hoping to do that, and we're going through the list. But there is also, unfortunately, every time we do this, we have to issue a new PDS, and that does take time and effort. Yeah, it's not a cost-free process.
Yeah, it's an interesting one on that front. What sort of decisions, what sort of factors come into play when you pick a particular ETF? One of the interesting things that came up in last week's Market Lit presentation is that you mentioned that Emerald was considered more of a light green sort of investment portfolio, even though more, I suppose, darker green investments, things that are supposed to focus more on ESG standards in the market. And what sort of decisions go into kind of deciding what goes into a portfolio and what comes out? And do you see things like changes to, say, a major portfolio like Emerald happening in the future, or are they pretty much fixed at this point in time?
Okay, so there's so many questions there, so you have to remind me if I get them. Fun. It's very, first of all, a lot of ESG, everyone has a difference of what light green and dark green is. Yeah. So, for example, some people won't care about Woolworths. Yeah. But some people won't touch Woolworths because even though it's a very small part of their revenue, they are still the largest owner of slot machines in the world. Yeah. And so they just won't, touch them. And I think a lot of Australians don't realise that Woolworths is the largest owner of pokie machines in the world. Yeah. Because they think it would be like some company out of Vegas or whatever. But it's still a very small amount of their revenue. Yeah. So it is a little, so that's concept number one. And I know that ASIC is doing an entire investigation into the market about all this greenwashing. What is the definition of an ESG company? What are the rules? Yeah. To try and work that out. Yeah. All companies use electricity. Yeah. And as we were talking about before, it's easier to measure on Bitcoin. It's harder to measure if every company's got their microwave turned on and how much energy they're using. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very difficult concept to do. So our portfolio, Emerald, has two different strategies in it. RARI has a different strategy than the ETHI index in the way it picks its ethical companies. Some people will think that the ETHI way is obviously more robust, I guess, and darker green than a RARI way. And fair enough. And that's why we call it a light green portfolio. We have introduced in custom portfolios more darker green ETFs. Again, they use different themes, so it's very hard to say, this is a philosophy behind Raiz's ESG portfolios, because it's not really that. It's like we provide ETFs which have a philosophy behind the way they look at ESG, and that's the philosophy. So in some ways, as we say, actually in our portfolio, they're only themed portfolio structures. And then the way we look at it is, from a few different lenses. One is liquidity in the market. Can we get in and out of the ETF? Yeah. Two is what we call issuer risk, and so we don't want to have a portfolio. We don't want to have only ETFs from Vanguard on our platform or only ETFs from BlackRock on our platform. Yeah, we want to have a mixture of companies providing ETFs. Yeah. And so we look at that as well, because if we, this concentration risk, as they would call it, issuer concentration risk, which is a technical term, is something that we look at as well. Yeah. And the other thing it's very hard to find in Australia is like a bond portfolio, which is an ETF product, which is ethical or ESG. And so that's another reason why they're just themed, because everyone looks at the equity side, but you also have to look at the bond side. And it's quite difficult to build bond ETF. And there may be bond, I think there's just been a couple of bond ETFs, ESG ETFs starting to come on the market now, which we'll start to look at. Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason we haven't changed the portfolios is there hasn't really been a need to. They've got a good mix of, they've got a good mix of issuer concentration risk. Yeah. Their portfolio asset allocations aren't great, on average. We've never come out and say we are the greatest fund manager. We're not coming out to try and beat every fund manager. We're an investment platform. We're a savings platform. We're teaching people how to save and invest and understand what's in the market. And I guess in a response to make it more flexible for customers, we introduce custom portfolios. Yeah. 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 And then they can do whatever they like in that space.
Yeah.
To an extent.
An interesting one on that front. Yeah. I know myself, I swapped a custom not long after it came out, and I've got my own little mix there and quite happy with it. But it's just interesting seeing how it all plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think.
Are you doing the Jaguar question? Come on.
Yeah, we should do the Jaguar question. All right. This was a bit of a silly one, but would you rather fight one Jaguar-sized chicken or 10 chicken-sized Jaguars?
I'm going to go for 10 chicken-sized Jaguars.
Why?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask that one. Yeah, because it's just, one, it'd be more fun. Yeah, and two is because they can't. You kind of can concentrate your force on just one at a time and keep moving around. Yeah, rather than having to. And so when you concentrate all your force on one small chicken-sized Jaguar, it's going to be a lot more effective than concentrating your force on one large chicken Jaguar.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Personally, I probably would have fought the Jaguar-sized chicken, just because I look at the size of a chicken as a Jaguar. You take out one of its legs and it's done. But
yeah, if you can take out one of its legs.
Yeah. Alrighty. Edsel asks, is Raiz hiring?
Not at the moment in Australia. It's, in the customer service space, they tend to be looking all the time. Yeah. But not, the next step we have to do is we have to integrate the super estate people into our platform. Yep.
So
I'm also the wrong person to ask. It's much better to ask Brendan that type of question.
Yeah, fair enough.
He's in charge of Australia.
Yeah. We might have to get him in the group sometime for a live chat.
You should. He's really good.
We'll see how that goes. Yeah. And how does everyone feel about that? There are 20 or so people watching. What do you reckon? We see if we can sneak Brendan Malone, who's the Australian CEO, in here one day. What do you reckon?
100%. He's much better looking than I am as well.
I don't know. I think you win on the beard game.
Yeah.
So,
but it's not all about the beard.
This is true. Yeah. See how that goes. All right. I'm just looking at some of the questions that have come through. I think we covered most things, to be honest. I mean, there was an interesting one about Raiz rewards, actually. Jacinta did ask, what does Raiz do with our spending data? So, for example...
yeah, nothing. I mean, sorry. It stays in the Raiz ecosystem. So some of the spending data, you'll see, you'll get a tip inside the app.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So to use, so it would be used internally in the system.
Yep.
But it doesn't get to try and make these, your experience with the app more personal.
Yeah.
Yep. So, but it wouldn't get, it's not sold outside the ecosystem.
Yeah. So Raiz isn't selling our data, but they might use it to, say, advertise, I suppose, Raiz energy, maybe when my bill gets paid or something.
Correct.
Does that sound about right? Because
it's more like something like that, or it's more, or, I don't know, you shop at Cotton On and therefore you might get shown a brand which is similar to Cotton On, or you might, if Cotton On is running a special inside Raiz rewards, you'll get shown that ad in the app.
Yeah.
Yep. So like if the reward went from 5% to 10%, I've got to be 100% honest here. I can't remember if Cotton On is still on the Raiz Reward platform.
I can check that. I know there's this great website that has all the Raiz features listed.
Yeah, sorry. I know it has been in the past, but anyway, but you know what I mean? They will use it, for example, if they've seen you shop there and the company's come back and doubled the reward.
Yeah.
To target more specifically to you. Yeah. And we're trying to improve it all the time so that when you open the app, the categories that get shown in Raiz rewards, for example, will be more personalized. And I know that they just launched the engine to do that at the back end side, or they're in the process of launching that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that needs, once that's up and running and stable and actually doing a good job, it can then be, we can start working on the front end to actually display it the way that arranges the tiles for Raiz rewards.
Yeah,
so that's the ultimate aim.
Yeah,
but it's all about trying to give the increasing experience for the user. And I remember a while ago before COVID, we used to have one of our most popular ones was when people caught Ubers. It would remind them to say to walk or catch public transport to save money. But that whole concept changed. COVID, and when no one wanted to catch public transport anymore.
What is it? Uber Eats these days, everybody's into, from what I heard. So, yeah.
I think Uber Eats is doing very well.
Yeah. I wonder if that's on Raiz rewards. I think it is, but yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it is. I think if you become an Uber driver, it can be on Raiz rewards or like a...
I know Cotton On definitely is.
Oh, thank God I got that right. Otherwise, Jessica would kill me.
If anyone's wondering who George is referring to when he refers to Jess is sponsorships and partnerships, if I remember right.
She's responsible for building Raiz rewards.
Yeah. Is she responsible for the TikTok as well? Because TikTok's really quiet.
She is definitely responsible for the TikTok. Yeah. But we're actually learning a lot about TikTok coming out of Indonesia and Malaysia. And it actually works a lot better for us up there than it does here.
Yeah,
in Australia.
I must admit, I always have an appreciation for the Raiz Malaysia's kind of memes and graphics when they do things. They did a really good one last year when COVID was starting, and it was elegantly simple. It was the Raiz logo, but they put little spacings between the different colored panels on it. It was just, stay safe, keep your distance. And I thought it was a lovely little sentiment to have. So
yeah. And it's good because all this information flows between all three areas all the time. Yeah. And we're getting better and better at that.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it goes over the next little while. So
yeah, it's going well at the moment. So, there's very early days for both Malaysia and Indonesia. So
yeah, it's definitely interesting as a group. I think your most recent ASX announcement put you at, I think it was just shy of $800 million in funds under management. Did you feel kind of gypped that the ex-dividend announcements were the very last day of the month?
Well, no, we always know it's always a problem for us in the June, and we've seen customers talk about it on the platform. Yeah. All the ex-dividend dates come out just before the end of June, which makes the portfolios look like they haven't performed well. The money is in the ether, and will be invested back into your Raiz account when it comes in, but it doesn't start coming in until
I think it's about mid next week, if I remember.
Yeah, mid next week. Yeah,
I think it's the 14th. If my little
and then suddenly your portfolio will bounce back with a vengeance. Yeah.
Suddenly everybody gets excited that it's dividend season and Christmas in July.
But the worst one was the year that Effie got restructured and paid a 10% dividend.
That was last year.
Was that last year?
Yeah, that was what was it? It was June 30th. They announced I think it was $1.06 dividend
on a $10 stock.
Yeah. And I remember myself and Rich, who's one of the mods, we sat down and we both went, what? Because we were both in the Emerald portfolio at the time. And
I think you just automatically lost, the portfolio was like 3% down before you even put your foot out the door.
Yeah.
Well, but it wasn't really, it's just the way it's reported it is.
Yeah, definitely. Do you see Raiz ever having like a feature in the app that says, you've got this much in dividends on the way and is expected, sometime later in the month? Or is that one of those tricky
things?
Can
you actually email that one in? That's actually not a bad idea. We've never actually ever said, no one's actually ever asked for that. But that's not, like on the market page, we could have dividends expected over the next 2 months. Or, one,
Yeah. I'll send an email if someone in the group hasn't already sent 4, which I suspect there might be a few people that are like, yeah.
Because we've done some stuff like that in Malaysia and Indonesia, where we have to spend a lot more time on education, and so where you get a lot more display around that type of information.
Yeah. Okay, an interesting one from Nick. Do you have a portfolio in Raiz? Specifically, Nick wonders, do you have a custom portfolio, and if so, what are you investing in?
Okay, so I actually have a custom portfolio, and yes, of course, I have a portfolio in Raiz. It is my main portfolio outside Super, I guess, and my shareholdings in the actual Raiz company. I guess, yeah. I will now just quickly look up and tell you. It's roughly an ethical portfolio with Bitcoin. And the reason why I've gone that way is because by default, when you tend to go into these ethical style portfolios, you will be heavily weighted towards tech companies, whether you like it or not. Yeah. So do you want the weightings as well or not? So there's like 5% AAA, 5% Bitcoin. Yeah. Then there's the Australian government bond index at around 20%. I have Betashare. I mean, obviously this is for me, and do what people should do, what it suits them.
Yeah.
I have Betashares and so I have the Fair and the Ethi, which are both Betashare responsible ones, at roughly equal weightings to the remainder. Yeah, so around 35%.
Interesting.
So that's it. It's very simple. But one of the main reasons is because you get tech companies. Now, obviously, that hasn't done that well. The Bitcoin's done okay for the last 3 or 4 months, but not necessarily the tech companies. But a lot of the, especially overseas, ESG investment will overweight you to tech because it takes out all the big petrochemical companies, which are huge. So they're gone out of the index straight away. Yeah. Takes out a lot of the big miners like BHP, so they're gone. And obviously, over the last 3 or 4 months, especially since November last year, when the trade started to change and people went, we're going to come out of this pandemic and the world's going to be okay. A lot of the run in the big tech companies kind of slowed down, and there's a shift back to the more cyclical and the COVID affected ones like, iron ore, for example, or copper, oil, etc. And so it slowed down a little bit compared to what other portfolios, but that was one of the reasons why I've been in more heavily weighted to ESG, just because they tend to be also heavily weighted to tech.
Oh, fair enough. If that's what you like, and that's what's
Right.
important, and
But that's just me.
yeah, and it's something to keep in mind is that everybody's personal financial and investing situation is different. This is
Great. And that's definitely for a long-term type portfolio. That's not a short-term type investing portfolio.
yeah. So yeah, obviously, if you're investing at your own risk, read the PDS. Even though I know a lot of you haven't, read the PDS.
Yeah.
Well, alrighty. Well, I suppose we will wrap it up there because I realise that we've gone for nearly an hour and 10 minutes.
That's fine, Josh. That'd be great. Yeah. And as always, it's great talking to you guys and answering your questions. I hope people find it useful.
Yeah. I know the first thing I'm going to do is after I send an email to support about the projected
dividends,
and send an email to support and figure out what's going on with those APIs.
Yeah, don't do that. Oh, they're going to hate me. Yeah. I think the TFN email went out today, which is something we legally have to do, and that annoys people enough today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just one of those things. It's
a horrible thing because people don't really like to do it, and they don't legally have to do it, but we legally have to ask for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of TFNs, would you know at all if Raiz is uploading statements to the ATO this year? I remember last year it wasn't a thing.
No.
There'd be a lot more data matching on their front.
It's not something we've looked into.
Mm-hmm.
The Raiz fees may be tax deductible.
Yeah.
Depending, which gets people confused a bit. But we haven't looked into uploading fees, and maybe next year another thing that you can email in, look into uploading statements into the system. Yeah.
It's an interesting one to see what happens. So,
have you seen other I know that the super funds will do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but not necessarily. Have you seen? I've never seen, and that will happen for our super funds. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I haven't seen it for outside super.
Yeah, I know similar platforms. So one of the common things is Spaceship. They have their annual member statement uploaded at the end of July, which I know is a running thing with them, but it obviously it's a little bit different with Raiz. So yeah. And I think Brendan's now in the chat, and so might have to get him in next time.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll as always, we're going to aim for our statements by the 3rd week of July. Yeah, for the tax.
Yeah. See how it goes.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I think we will wrap it up from here. Did you have any final words or thoughts you wanted to share with the audience, George?
No, just thank you for your support.
No worries. It's always a pleasure to sit down and have a chat.
Yeah. And it's always, we do, we find it very useful, or I find it very useful because I do look at that Raiz Central often to get feedback on how people are using the app, what they're using it for, what their pain points are for, whatever. And I find that very useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I do the odd congratulations if I come across it. Quite
a few of them. All we need now is for Raiz to steal our memes, and we'll call ourselves legitimate. So
yeah, well, it's hard. Memes are hard, Josh. Give me a break, because it's hard to come up with one which are really funny.
Wow.
In financial services.
I mean, admittedly, mine kind of lean into kind of terrible at times. So, admittedly, I did like the one I did with General Grievous. That was a good laugh.
Yeah.
But yeah, that being said, don't sue me for the race face masks.
No, I like the race face masks. Well done.
Alrighty, so we will close it up from here. But thank you for your time, everybody. As always, you know where to find us in the group. Obviously, if you've got support queries, send an email to Raiz Support. But yeah, alrighty.
Thanks, everyone.
From here, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right. And if I click, all right.